Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of LiveFaith, where we have conversations about life and faith and what that whole thing looks like. Today, I got a good buddy that's going to jump on, and I have what I think is going to be an interesting conversation, though. Uh, to be honest, our conversations go a lot of different directions. We could end up talking about basketball rather than what we had started to plan here. I'd like to introduce everybody to my friend, Joseph Witmer. Say hi, Joe.
Hi, Joe.
Joseph and I did ministry together in Fairmont a few years back. He has since moved to Clarksville, Tennessee, where he and his wife are starting a small business. And he picked this really brilliant idea of launching this on-site small business in the middle of a pandemic. Uh, but Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about your business? And before you get started, I need to take a drink of coffee here, but you can go ahead and tell us.
Well, yeah, so it wasn't our plan to start our business. The perfectly placed business that was on the mug in which you had a drink of. It wasn't our plan to start that from in the middle of the pandemic. We actually launched in July 2018, and basically we had no idea what we were doing getting into it, and we still have very little idea what we're doing now. But it just kind of worked out all this way. We were starting to pick up in our sales and stuff towards the end of the last year, right around the time that our third son was born. And I was like, there's no way Amanda can handle this workload. And if we want to keep growing, she's not going to be able to do it by herself. And so I decided to put in my notice and quit my regular job with my regular income. And July 5th of it's whatever that first Friday is in January, or not July, January, the first Friday of January of this year, I left, was my last day at the bank that I worked at. And we've been surviving since then. And actually, in a lot of ways, the pandemic has helped our business because our model is delivery and pickup, and we don't have a storefront. We're doing it out of our home. So makes a big difference that way. And then now we do have a storefront, and we've been working on it, and that has been interesting with the pandemic. But nonetheless, I think it's prepared us in a lot of ways for when we actually do open. We're really having, starting to develop a customer base this way, and the community is ready for us to be open. And so that's really, really exciting, that actually people we don't know are actually supporting us and excited for us to open, and they're not friends of ours. So we're like family, personal friends. But it's been really, really weird and exciting. But actually, we've been carried through this time in kind of miraculous ways. So it's been a blessing above everything else, as hectic or crazy as it may be. And actually, I wish that we were kind of still quarantined a little bit more. I don't really love.
Oh, no, don't.
You don't understand. People here are out of their minds. Like, TJ Maxx had like a grand reopening sale, and there was balloons and a line like into the parking lot. People are insane here. And like, when there was nobody on the road, anybody that was out was basically at Lowe's. So if you just avoided Lowe's, you were going to be fine. So that's where, like, I could stand with, social distancing a little bit. Like, you stay away from me. Don't cough in my space. I'll walk one way down this aisle. You walk one way down the other aisle. We won't really interact. The introvert in me really loves these things. So, yeah, you keep your space. I'll keep mine, and we'll all be happy. And we'll hug if I want to hug, kind of thing.
Yeah, if we're honest, us introverts aren't struggling through this quite as much as other people might.
Yeah, thank you for finally keeping your distance. Now, if you could just do that with your vehicle on the road, we'll be straight.
So we got to work on your product placement. Two Birds Coffee Company. Yeah, you have a black cup with no logo on it. I'm not even I'm not 2 states away from the business, and I've got the logoed mug. You do deliver to Minnesota. I got my delivery of cold brew after ordering it for months here this last fall. You finally brought me a mug.
Oh my gosh, that would be awesome. Actually, if we could do that, if somebody wants to donate like a significantly sized box truck with refrigeration, then we could start doing like person to person delivery across the country. It just, COVID-19 restricts our ability to deliver in a prompt manner. So
A growler of cold brew is $8 with the delivery charge of 98.
60, yeah, and at least a 3-day window, yeah, at least.
So we have talked about this a little bit, but you've been doing your sort of out of the home business for a couple of years. Why don't you talk a little bit about your decision to try and move into a storefront and how that's looked with the challenges of the social distancing. I know Tennessee is in a little bit of a different place than Minnesota is right now, the third week of May, but what challenges have you had to sort of fight in the middle of that?
Well, first of all, people that I know have been to Nashville and have taken pictures of what were normally highly congested areas, even now after we're phasing back in opening businesses and whatnot. And it's like, post-apocalyptic. There's nobody there. So I think that's like people are taking it seriously, which I think has really helped the state's progress, even though many people are critical of decisions that have been made. But I think you're going to find that anywhere. But ultimately, as far as, navigating around that as a business, working from our home, like I said, the decision to move out of our home and into a storefront happened before stuff started shutting down. So we were already in motion that way before, and decided not to stop because we felt like, pun intended, the pandemic would kill it. So like if we decided to stop trying to move forward, I think we would have ended up at least on bed rest, and potentially unrecoverable, because our whole business is person to person sales and social media interactions, and you sending me a message and saying you want coffee, and I say, okay, I'll get it to you as soon as possible, whether it be a 3-month delivery time or not. In reality here locally, it's, we ask people to give us at least a business day. And once everything started shutting down and people couldn't even go into coffee shops for a little bit, about a week, coffee shops are trying to figure out whether or not they were going to do curbside, or like they were reformatting the structure of their business. And ours was already designed for this. So within that week, we slowed down a second and we started to question things. And then all of a sudden, we started getting all these orders, and it was to the point where like we doubled in April. Should have been our worst month ever. We doubled our sales from the previous month, and we were up like 1,000% from the previous year. And it was the best month we ever had. And May is still going in the same. It's not continuing to climb; it's about the same, but it's at a much higher plateau. So. Very significant uptick, mostly just because people are like, I'm going to have stuff delivered to my house, or I'm going to have to go get it. And we're like, well, we'll deliver to your house. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to buy your coffee, and then people are finding out that it's good. And I'm not trying to brag, but it is good coffee. And it's just a matter of, people trying it, and we've not spent like any money on advertising or marketing besides a Facebook ad here and there. So, basically, like we found the location after we had been looking for a little while, and got started, got a key, signed a lease, and then everything shut down. So we were like, what are we going to do? We ended up like trying to keep moving forward, and we don't have like extra loan money or anything. So we're trying to do it all like kind of, what is it? Hand to mouth. That's how we're eating right now. So that's how we're living too. And So, but I mean, the hardest part this far has been trying to, get all the extra people and that need to be involved in to do the work, and so now that things are starting to clear up, now we're starting to get traction, but I mean, it could mean other things that could be negatives for us. So we're just trying to keep pressing on in that way. But we wanted to move out of our house initially anyway, because like, I mean, we're working with about 1,000 square feet in our house, and our kitchen is maybe 300. We've got one counter that's interrupted by a sink, and we're making 5 pounds of coffee at a time, and that takes up a significant amount of counter space. Um, so I mean, the biggest motivator for us is to get into a space that we can actually move and get all the stuff out of our house that's coffee related. And then once we're in there, we feel like there's really no ceiling to how much we can produce. Um, it's just a matter of, I mean, because we basically have projections for um, both regular cup sales of coffee and then our continued growler sales. And just at the regular trajectory that we're at with a very low expectation, we could be, maintaining and even like adding to our business and taking care of our personal life as well, without really much more than what we're doing right now. So if we could just, it's the whole thing is just like, if we could just get there, then we can have everything that we want, right? I mean, it's like, I think that's the American struggle leading up to the American dream, is if we could just get a little bit more, then we could be okay. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if that answers your questions 100%, but that's kind of how we've been navigating and running and trying to get, I mean, again, trying to get out of our home, um, I mean, it's a challenge too to try to do everything by the book, above, at least at or above standards in every possible way, and that's been a challenge as well, like trying not to break any rules or get in trouble early on and end up with our business shut down before we even get started.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting to see, we see here so much about these small businesses and especially, food service industry like you are trying to engage in, and the struggles that are having at this time. Sounds like you were positioned well going into it, but every step along the way, there's questions. What is going to happen? How is that going to adjust our business model, our mentality going into this? And despite that, you've pushed forward, and I saw the picture here this last week of you guys actually hanging your sign outside the door, and that had to be a pretty cool moment for you, considering the what you've gone through the last few months, let alone the last couple of years.
Yeah, surreal. It's surreal. I mean, we had the sign made, and it was like, I mean, just overwhelming joy to see, a local craftsman having put in, I mean, into metal and wood, what we were dreaming. And actually, the design for that particular logo, the one that's on our bottles and the one that's on our sign, is actually done by a friend of ours that lives up in Fairmont. So, I mean, which is really cool. Like, I mean, to have a back home artist do something for our down home, business, and then to see that not only just leaning up against a wall inside of our building, but up against the wall, attached, fixed to the wall outside in our unit, and people are driving by and seeing it every day. There's 1,000 people, in the morning, and maybe another 1,000 people in the evening driving by there every day, seeing our sign up on the building, and we're nowhere close to being finished. But I felt just this weight, like, if we can afford the sign, so let's buy that. If we can get it up, then there's no limit to how many people could see us. We, did the post, and it's like, let's drive people to the shop. There's nothing for them there except for the sign, but maybe we'll give away a gift card or something, like go there, look at our sign, check it out, take a picture of yourself there or whatever, like, and tag us. And I mean, let their reach expand our reach, and but like, to hear people are messaging me privately, even not even on social media, but like sending me texts, like saying, we drove by, saw your sign today, it's awesome, like, we're so happy for you, like, we're excited to get that you're gonna get open. And I mean, this is such a huge step. And like you said, I mean, it's so surreal that we're here. And I can only imagine, you know, what I mean, what the next feeling will be like, you know, to have counters and to have our equipment, to have a multi-thousand-dollar espresso machine on our counter, and like to actually be serving people coffee sounds crazy, but like it'll be us. It won't be, you know, what I mean, we're not being employed, we're not hired as, you know, making part-time money working somewhere doing it. Like it's our business. I never ever thought that we would be here, honestly.
So, to give a little background for those who don't know our history, you know, this was something that, you know, putting a coffee shop together was something you and I talked about the possibility of doing in Fairmont once upon a time too in ministry, and really the central part of a lot of our conversations related to that was integrating our faith and our ministry into our business. And I know that's something that you and Amanda are looking to do with Two Birds. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what I know we've kicked around this idea of what it looks like to have a Christian business and whether or not there's such thing as a Christian business, but you know how does your faith integrate in with your business, your business plans and the mentality of how you're going to do Two Birds?
So the dream for us didn't start with just having a coffee shop. I mean, we wanted to do like a side by side interactive kind of all inclusive business, coffee shop, and local ministry. And Two Birds wasn't going to be Two Birds. It was going to be the Well. And, you know, it was going to have this integrated nonprofit type deal where basically it serves as a central hub for people helping organizations within the community. And that's what Amanda and I had kind of dreamed of from the start. Well, that's an undertaking so far beyond us. Like it would have been unrealistic for us to try to run a business and also run a nonprofit trying to help people out. And while the model could have worked, it was not God's way or timing, you know. And so we the way we ended up getting to where we are, I mean, we downscaled and downscaled and downscaled our vision from ministry and coffee shop to um, just coffee shop to just a roastery to making cold brew and serving it at farmers market, which we were quickly able to just be like, well, let's just make the cold brew, I'll sell it, and we'll get our brand out there before farmers market, to now we're opening a coffee shop. So to say that we won't have a nonprofit or we won't be working with people helping organizations, secular or, you know, or faith-based, is not out of the question. However, what we've learned through all this process is that sacrificing a nonprofit organization and sacrificing a ministerial role in a very overt way, you know, I mean, the ministry overtly, you know, it's not hidden, but sacrificing that doesn't mean that we're actually sacrificing ministry at all. Learning that, like what we've learned is what you said, you know, is there such thing as a Christian business? Well, like there's Christians and then there's business, and there's this whole charge to be in the world and not of the world. So what I've come to realize is that there's so much more to that statement than maybe what we've realized. And it's like, we are, and not just in the world, we're instructed to be here and to be present. And like, he's over here with the motorcycle, like this is present for him. This is active for him. Like wanting to be here with me, that's in the world. If I'm so concerned about how many people are going to be tuning into this so that they might get saved, I might miss this moment. You know, I might miss that he's here with me, and I might try to push him away. God never called us to push relationships, push people away just so we could accomplish his ministry that he's called us to. That's like, that's something I've realized, like even in ministry exclusively without business, is that if I have to disengage or shun or shirk responsibilities in any other capacity that I might have been given to steward in order to do the thing that I think God has called me to do, then I'm not doing the thing God's called me to do at all. It's like if you're single and you're a pastor, then your whole reality is the church. But in most cases in today's culture, you're not single, you're married and you have children. And so if you can't love the church if you don't love your wife, or if you can't, or you can't love your community if you don't love your children, certainly not going to love other people's children if you don't love your own, and so that's when so business was something that I realized doesn't have to be done ministerially, I guess. Like, it doesn't have to be ministry itself, but there had to be something different about the way a child of God, a saved person, a redeemed person, does business. And what I realized is that business isn't something that the world came up with, that I have to then shelter Christians within in order to keep them safe from the world. But rather, I'm in this world, and so I need to live in such a way that shows the world that I don't belong to the ways of the world, the heart of the world, the culture that is earthly. But like, so how do I do something that is entirely earthly and entirely tethered to the earth in a way that is eternal? And now all of a sudden everything starts to shift in me. Like, wow, like, that's what it's all been all about all along. And God started convicting my heart about art and about music and like visual thing, just basically every aspect of creating. And having a business is creating, painting and serving. All of it is creating. What you're doing is creating opportunities. You're creating service. You're creating beauty. And we were made in the image of a creator, and that image is to therefore be creating as well. We're creators as well. And so I was like, well, looking at history, I mean, I don't want to get into the whole thing, but like looking at, I do, I want to.
I was going to say, yes, you do want to get into the whole thing, but we're limited on time here.
Yeah. So like, I'm trying to condense it. So basically, like, if you look at history and how it is cyclical and it repeats itself yet linear, we continue to progress and move forward towards whatever comes next, and or whenever it comes next. And essentially what we've seen over and over and over again that's happened is the creator creates. He created creation to create, and creation stopped creating. And then the world that was not in love with the creator continued to create in place of the set apart people, if you will. Like, you go back to creation and Adam and Eve, they're enjoying time, they're creating. God gave them dominion over the earth or whatever, and Adam's naming animals. There's creation there. He's given Eve and told to procreate. And it's like, and so like what happens here is, then the fall happens. It's like, well, that's like, now I'm going to trust in something that is creation rather than the creator to take control over creation. And then that pattern continues to happen throughout scripture, biblically, ancient history to present time. You look at the church and the state of the church. The whole problem that I see is that we've surrendered creation to the world. And it's like, if we stop creating because creation is creating, and we're afraid to look too much like creation instead of like the creator, so we stop creating, well, they're going to keep doing it, and it's going to look more and more worldly and less eternal. So then I realized that the model there is that's one of the reasons why Christ came. So we have God, our creator, and we have God, our redeemer. And all of the scripture can be summarized in those two things, creation and redemption. So like, I'm not just, I promise I have a point. But so like, what I'm realizing though is that we as redeemed stopped creating and have lost our identity. And the world has kept it up, not even realizing why they're doing it. Then Jesus gave us the model for redemption, and then we stopped redeeming. And as long as we're not working in tandem, hand in hand with the Redeemer to redeem creation, the world will continue to just do things the way that it ought to. So when we're looking at business, art, creativity of any kind, whether it be innovation and invention, or building models out of Legos, it doesn't really matter what we're doing as long as we're using the things that God has equipped us with to be creators. The reason why the church and the world are so disconnected, why faith and business are disconnected, it's because we're trying to combine the two in a way that is irrelevant. It doesn't exist. It's I mean, the two are at an impasse with one another. They're gonna fight against each other constantly. And so we live in a constant conflict between needing to pay my bills and wanting to give God credit. And uh, what changes though is when we realize that business isn't something that the world came up with; it's something God came up with. Creation is something that God does, not the world. So whether it's music or whatever, it's like, well, such and such genre of this or that or the other is is Satan's, is the enemy's. No, it's not. Nothing belongs to him. Everything belongs to God, and everything that comes from God is good. So this is just a perversion of God's truth. So when we want to run business, all of these things coming to this, like Two Birds Coffee is about doing life together, relationally, interpersonally, and that's our business model. That's the culture of our business. And the reason why we've decided to make that our heart and mission is because we care about you more than we care about coffee. And coffee is a great common denominator between people who love God and people who don't love God. And just like so many other things. So when we run our business, how do we no, we're not going to have a Christian business. We're going to have our business and we're going to love the Lord in the process. What we have an opportunity to do is to create both relationships and a business model and all these things. We can do these things as good stewards of what God has given us, and we can do it in a way that buys it back for the kingdom. We can honor God in an eternal way, live in an eternal way, and have a earthly tethered business and do it in an eternal way. And then all the world that's around us will say, what's so different about this place? Why do I want to be here? It's special. These people are special. No, we're not. And the business is not. It's all earthly. But there's God here, and that's the difference. We're doing it in a way that brings him ultimate glory. And we discussed before we went live that that's going to look different for a lot of people. But if we can start from that platform, that basis, the foundation of creation and redemption, and how we in his image are creators and redeemers, I think it makes it easier for us to apply that age-old lesson of do all that you do for the glory of God. But I'm a carpenter, but I'm a painter, but I'm a garbage collector, but I'm a janitor, but I'm not in ministry. No, you're not. But your life is. You're not. We need to stop being in ministry, and we need to start being in relationship. Because it's not about all the things we're doing for the Lord. It's about doing the things with God. So anyway, I think that's what business looks like. And really everything in our life is driven by this. And my desire is that people will see that, and that will be the new standard. And even people that don't love God will be like, we need to live at this standard, and they won't even realize what they're doing.
Maybe another way to sort of turn around this philosophy of life that you've just put into your small business plan. We've too often we've allowed the world to dictate what things look like and put things in boxes. And that's not what we're called to as believers. I'm in formal ministry as a pastor, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we allow the world to say, well, this is what church looks like. It's this box, and the people who do ministry, have the title of pastor that fit in this box. But even as pastor, I've said from the beginning, that's not how it works. We are called to be in the world to do what God has called us to do. And whether you're called to vocational ministry, you're called like my wife to be a Christian graphic designer, you're called like you to be a Christian small business owner. It's the whole of who you are in that ministry simply is an aspect of whatever vocational calling God has placed on each of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely agree with that. And realizing too that while each avenue or niche or whatever, each gifting that we may have, there's plenty of people who don't love Jesus that are incredibly gifted, right? I could give a number of examples, even from our conversations we've had already, but point being though that God equips people to it's biblical. We're equipped to do every good work that's been set apart before we were here to do it. And so the issue that we may have is that we might be reading that scripture thinking that I've got the faith that I need, I've got the spiritual maturity that I need, and it's like I've got the mindset that I need. It's all these internal things. Like, what happens if you were equipped to do this good work with a bachelor's degree in communications? And what if you were equipped with 17 years of experience in a job that you've hated? What if you were equipped with a life of surrendered service to the world, and you didn't have a relationship with God, and you were saved at an adult age? What do you do with all that time? Was it a waste? No. He was using that to equip you to do the thing that he's called you to do after you become saved. So, like, it's all about it, and that's where everything changes for me, is that your experiences leading up to this point have brought you to a position where you can lead your faith family well, and your family well, and your community well, and you can set an example above the status quo because he's called you to that. He's called us all to that, and you're equipped with it, and it's earthly things too. He's equipped you with a home and a community in a small town in Minnesota to be able to reach people there in ways that no one else has been able to in some cases, or in ways people haven't been able to because they didn't have the same gifts or the same skills as you. And that's where, like, we had no intention of coming back here to plant roots. Like, I wanted to serve in my grandparents' church and be here for them in case something happened. And here we are, with a 5-year lease on a building and a business. Like, we never anticipated that, and I don't know how long that's going to keep us here. And maybe our brand will grow big enough that we can just move around. I don't know, but I don't want to put any limits on what God wants to do. So how can I serve Him well with what He's given us? We don't have a mansion down here. We don't have a bunch of land. I don't have livestock. I mean. My personal wealth is not budding, so I don't have those as resources. However, what He has given me is plenty of provision, and I've got manna, I've got bread for today. So how can I love Him and love people with what He's given me and steward that gift well?
It's not life ministry, it's life ministry, and we live our lives the way God has called us to do, no matter what that looks like.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Definitely.
Well, there's a lot to chew on there, Joe. Thanks for your thoughts. I guess in closing here, maybe answer our one last question. What's one last way that you would encourage others to live out their faith in their day-to-day lives?
That's a kind of an age-old question, isn't it? I think people have been preaching on this for some time. And I don't think that I know any better than anybody else necessarily that's tried before me. However, I think what God has gifted me or wanted me to steward, as far as it's just perspective. Like, I don't know that I have all the practical steps for you or for so-and-so that's watching. Like, I can't necessarily direct you in that way. But what I do know is that one of the greatest challenges is having the right perspective. And when I read that in Philippians that we're told to let this mind be in us, that which is of Christ Jesus. Like, that word mind can mean thoughts, it can mean perspective, it can mean attitude, right? So it's almost like let this posture, let your life be at this posture. Humbled, come down off of your throne, do things the way Jesus did. Surrender the things in you that you think are God worthy. Surrender the aspects of yourself that you think make you God. And in Jesus' case, He was, but in my case, I'm not. And so, like, for me it's a delusion in itself to think that I have control, that I'm on the throne at all. For Christ, it was actual truth. And yet He still was able to surrender aspects of Himself that I can't comprehend. And what I'm asked to do is to follow that example. So living life every day, day to day, is about, I think it starts with perspective. To say, I mean, my grandpa lived this way. He would wake up and he would tell everyone, "It's like, I just put my pants on just like everybody else." And he would say, it's uh, but when he gets up, he makes gold records. Uh, the more cowbell scene. But in my grandpa's case, like, that actually is kind of true in a way. Like, I mean, for him, the only prescription wasn't more cowbell. It was just waking up and trusting the Lord. When he put his pants on one leg at a time, he and the Lord were having a conversation. It's like, take me where you want me to go and show me what you want me to see, and I will say what you want me to say. And that was his morning conversation with the Lord. And then he went throughout his day without any worry or concern. And that's a kind of faith and freedom that people with certain personalities might be more lend to than others. But I think there's a principle or an example there that is relevant for all of us. So, I mean, so how do you navigate your everyday life doing normal things and live in the mundane and be in the valley? Well, it's like, I think the first thing is to remember that God is most present with us in the valley. He was visible on the mountain with Moses, but his desire was to walk with the people in the valley. And as long as we're putting it out there, nominating people to spend time with the Lord on our behalf and to communicate for the Lord on his behalf, and we're just kind of saying, okay, Lord, this is all great, and I love that you want to have a relationship with me, but you're kind of scary, and what you're asking me to do is scary. So can you just put somebody else in that position for me? And I don't think I don't think any of us are gonna see the glory of God in any kind of way manifested in our life. It's all going to be reflected off of somebody else's face. And I think we have the opportunity to wake up and experience and live each day, making our money, paying our bills, living each day, getting through, surviving, making it to the end. And for those who know Jesus, there's, an eternity of a hopeful eternity waiting. But otherwise, it's like the thing that sets us apart isn't that we have an eternity that's waiting for us. The thing that sets us apart is that we live like we do now and live out the eternal hope that's within us, rather than living there's very little distinction between a believer in mundane everyday life and a non-believer in mundane everyday life, because we all complain about the same things. So I do think that, I mean, this is a lesson, honestly, that I'm learning, perspective that I'm trying to adapt and actually live. It's one thing to know it; it's another thing to apply it. But I definitely think that it starts with looking at my life as being more than just what I'm doing today, and all the things that I think are stupid or are non-essential are 100% essential, and God sees it and knows it and ordained it, and has you in that position for a reason, has us in this position for a reason, in Clarksville, and in Fairmont, or in West Coast, or living on a barge in the middle of the ocean. Huh? The drink doesn't work? Drink. No.
I think he wants coffee, Joe. I think he wants.
He probably does. So, yeah. Anyway, I mean, I do think that it's about our perspective, and if we see these moments as not nuisances or inconveniences, but a string fell off the guitar. Okay, I'll fix it. It will work, I promise. Each moment that we have is meaningful and valuable, and God isn't just sitting up in the clouds somewhere looking down at us, laughing at how idiotic we are. Like, each thing that we're going through is important to him, because we're going through it, and he's not apart from us. He's personal and relational and relatable. And so he sees us in his situation, in our need, and desires to walk with us in those moments. Remembering that, I think, changes everything, how we do everything. I mean, get up, do your job, love your family, love your community. But, just remember that God's with you in each moment of it. And I think that's where it's made the biggest impact for me. And like I said, it's still something I'm learning to apply personally, but I don't know if I'll ever have it really figured out practically. But it's something that I'm trying to do.
That's just how life goes, isn't it? We struggle along, we do the best we can, and we trust that God will bring us to the end.
Right.
Well, thank you, Joe, for your time. As always, some very thoughtful stuff and some good stuff to chew on. And thank all of you for joining us on another episode of Live Faith. We'll see you next time. God bless. Joe, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.